Israel can begin annexing the West Bank on July 1st. It is possible this one event could start a chain reaction leading to the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years. We'll analyze this event and the prophecy on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. July 1st. It's the date that we're looking for and the events that will follow that to see if one of the greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years is set in motion. The most prominent provision of Israel's new government's platform is that Israel will annex the Jewish settlements and the Jordan Valley in the West Bank, also referred to as Judea. The land Israel plans to annex makes up 30% of the West Bank, leaving 70% of the Palestinians for a Palestinian state. If you look at this map I have up here, the nation of Israel would be a lot bigger than this, but this is just the West Bank. And you can see this would be the Jordan Valley running down through here. On this side would be Jordan, and there's the Moab Mountains. Then you have the Jordan Valley, very flat. It's as flat as the studio I'm standing in now. And then on the west side is the Judean Samaritan Hills, which makes up the West Bank. And so you've got settlers and everything out here from 1967 on. Jews begin to settle out here, and they created what's called the settlements. There are also Arabs or Palestinians living out there. But what Israel wants to annex is this area right here where you see the dark blue area. This is the Jordan Valley and part of the West Bank. They want to annex that so that way they can guarantee that they will have a buffer zone between them and the Arab nations in order to be able to secure that border. It's a security reason. And so they got to have defensible borders. If they lost this area right here, people would be able to attack in here real easily. They have to retain that. And President Trump, Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, they all realized this when they came up with President Trump's deal of the century. And so I wanted to make sure you understood what Israel hoped to do prior to President Trump's deal of the century coming out. They wanted to leave this the way it was and to annex this area in the Jordan Valley, okay? And then the Palestinians would have, they're hoping for a Palestinian state. And I'll get to President Trump's map here in a minute. So if the Palestinians choose to participate in President Trump's deal of the century, then they would have a two-state solution created in here in these areas right here. Not this area, but in the area that's left, that's where the settlements and different things are. And I'll show you in a minute how all that's going to play out. According to Haaretz, a lot of people have asked us, what's the annexation, sovereignty, and all that stuff? What's that mean? Well, in general, the term annexation or applying sovereignty to this area is a declaration that territories defined as occupied under international law would become an integral part of the territory of the state annexing it, in this case, Israel, especially in terms of the law, jurisdiction, and administration applicable to them. This replaces the military rule that applies under international law to occupied territories. And that usually refers to a unilateral step, which is what they're wanting to do, taken by the occupying power, not a step reached through negotiations and peace. They want that. But if the Palestinians don't want to play ball, then they're going to go in there and do it anyway. And so it's the same way that Israel annexed the Golan Heights and the United States recognized that, and East Jerusalem. And it was through unilateral moves accompanied by government decisions and then Knesset legislation. Well, that's what they're going to do here, but it's going to be in alignment with President Trump's peace plan, which is a little different than this map. I'm going to show you a map here in a minute. Well, now Netanyahu wants to declare, with U.S. backing, Israel's sovereignty over the Jewish settlements, which are scattered throughout here, and that are established in this West Bank since 1967, the 6 Days War, including this Jordan Valley region. And he has stated his intention to do this several times over the past 3 election campaigns. And initially, he focused on annexing the Jordan Valley, but later began to promise annexation of all the settlements in the West Bank in accordance with President Trump's Middle East peace plan released in January 28th. So if I could bring up the map, President Trump's map here that he gave. So this is this is a conceptual map that was included in President Trump's vision for peace, or the quote-unquote deal of the century. And this is what he's wanting to do, and it's a little bit different than what Israel originally wanted to do. But Israel's willing to do this because they're going to gain more territory than they had originally. So when we get back, we'll go through some of the differences in the original map that Israel had and what President Trump is proposing, and so everybody can kind of understand what's going to happen here.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, End Time Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So the difference in the two maps, the one Israel had originally and this one in the conceptual map in President Trump's plan, is that this two-state solution was not included in that. President Trump, Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, they all got together with Israel and said, hey, what do you need? We're going to come up with a solution here, but we've got to have a two-state solution in there, or it's never going to fly with the international community or the Palestinians. They're not even going to negotiate anything. So this is what they came up with. This is the conceptual map. Now, there's a new map being made with all of the, it's a very detailed map, and they're actually making this, it's going to look a lot more detailed than this, where they have everything lined out to the point where this side of the road is the Palestinians, this side of the road is Israeli settlements. So this is, again, just a conceptual map, but this is the two-state solution created here. This is the nation of Israel, and it actually goes farther down the Negev desert, but the you can see that this two-state solution is what they want to have, and then as the area that that Israel wanted to annex is less than what President Trump's map allots for. They had to do it that way because they had to incorporate Jericho and some other places out here. So it takes a little bit. However, it does leave the Jordan Valley under Israel's annexation and sovereignty rule. So that's very, very important. The Palestinians wanted to go all the way back to 67 borders and take all this. And President Trump is not going to allow them to do that. And so this is what he's allotted for. So you need to understand the maps if you understand what Irvin, Baxter, and I talk about all the time. It's very, very important. So, and this annexation by Israel, it's going to be another huge step towards Israel regaining possession of the land promised to Abraham in Genesis 15:18. The Palestinians, they're bitterly opposed to this move by Israel. And they have contended since 1967 that Israel should withdraw all the way back to the borders as they were before the 1967 Six Days War and renounce its annexation of East Jerusalem, which was done back in 1980. And so the Palestinians, they've contended that they must have all this whole area, including the Jordan Valley and East Jerusalem, and that includes the Temple Mount area. Well, there's no way Israel's going to do that. And so they had to come up with some kind of a solution. So most of the international community, including the European Union, the United Nations, they're bitterly opposed to this unilateral move on the part of Israel. And they adamantly contend that international law states the planned annexation of the Jewish settlements and the Jordan Valley is a flagrant violation of international law, according to Resolution 2334. However, America has publicly disagreed, and we've stated that Israel's adoption of sovereignty over the settlements is not a violation of international law because the United States has veto power on the UN Security Council. This leaves the international community with very little recourse to challenge Israel's actions. I mean, remember when we recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and we recognized their sovereignty of the Golan Heights up here, what happened? Nothing. Everybody sat around howling at the moon, the international community, they were all up in arms, but nothing happened to Israel or the United States. Well, now you've got President Trump's peace plan that's been proposed, and Israel, according to the new governmental agreement that was signed between Netanyahu and Gantz, it allows them to start this process July 1, less than 2 months from now. And so you can see why we watch this on a daily basis. And some people say, well, I'm getting tired of hearing about the peace agreement. Do you understand? This could be the beginning of the final 7 years. It could be steps leading to that. And we've got to talk about it. I mean, this could be the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years. It's the prophecy with a date on it. Now, I want to go over some more stuff with you because I want to talk about forcing the Palestinian action. It's very important. Before I do, I want to announce a prophecy conference that I'll be at this weekend in Jena, Louisiana. It'll be Friday night, May 29th, from 7 to 9 p.m. I'll be teaching Satan's end time plan. And then Saturday night, May 30, from 6 to 8 p.m., I'll be giving an updated Breaking Prophetic Fulfillments. You won't want to miss that. And it's at Pastor Curtis Thornton's church, Shady Grove United Pentecostal Church in 1384 Highway 460, Jena, Louisiana. And the church's phone number, if you get lost or anything, 318-992-4761. I'd be happy to see you guys down there. Last time we had one, it was awesome. And so get out of the house. We've all been cooped up in this coronavirus situation. Get out of the house. Come out for a great time, a great prophecy conference. And I hope to see you all there. So So there are now 800,000 Jews living in the territory the Palestinians claim for their proposed Palestinian state. What's going to happen to them? Well, Israel has already annexed East Jerusalem, uniting it with West Jerusalem as their capital. And this status quo has now existed for the last 40 years. President Trump on December 6th, 2017, recognized that a united Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and proceeded to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And knowing it was not feasible to move 800,000 Jews out of the West Bank, remember in 1967 there were 0 in this area I just talked about on the maps. Now there's about 800,000. Well, so what do? Well, Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt had to craft a creative solution to give the Palestinians statehood and to satisfy their demand for a capital in Jerusalem. So the question is, how could a Palestinian state be established in an area already sprinkled with so many Jewish settlements? Well, they decided that when the Palestinian state is established, that the Jewish settlements within the Palestinian state would continue to be part of Israel, even though they were surrounded by Palestinian territory, which is very prophetic, Matthew chapter 24. Each settlement would be connected by a road back to Israel territory. If you want to see the map, President Trump's map, go to the conceptual maps or the Prosperity to Peace plan on the White House website, and you can see the conceptual maps. You see all the roads I'm talking about. So the Trump peace plan was accompanied by a map, like I just showed you, demonstrating how this would be done. And the peace plan also calls for the Palestinian capital to be established in extreme East Jerusalem on the east side of the security wall. So this was designed to satisfy two of the Palestinians' demands, a Palestinian state and a capital in East Jerusalem. The Trump plan did not require a Palestinian agreement in order for Israel to activate its part of the plan. So the deal of the century said that Israel should be permitted to annex the West Bank settlements and the Jordan Valley after July 1, 2020, less than 2 months away. If the Palestinians refuse to agree to the plan, as they have always done concerning other peace initiatives, that would not stop Israel from moving forward on its part of the plan, something that's never been done before. Israel's annexation of the settlements and the Jordan Valley, it only depended on one condition. Israel had to offer good faith negotiations to the Palestinians concerning the establishment of a Palestinian state. You realize that Israel is willing to, under the President Trump's peace plan, give them a Palestinian state out there. Israel is really stretching here, believe me. A lot of people don't want to do it, but Prime Minister Netanyahu is willing to. So a committee was formed in February to draw up the official map that would define the borders of the settlements and of the new Palestinian state. They're working on that right now, but it's supposed to be done prior to July 1. And the committee is made up of Americans and Israelis, and to be finished by July 1. So these conditions built into the deal of the century, they've removed, and we talk about this, we've removed their veto power. We talk about that all the time, the Palestinians. Well, this did remove the veto power of the Palestinians over the Trump peace plan. How? Well, if they choose to cooperate towards the establishment of a Palestinian state and their capital in East Jerusalem, then America has promised to assist them in every way. And they will eventually enjoy the recognition of statehood by the United States and membership in the United Nations as a legitimate nation would be encouraged. So the Palestinians are going to come from a third world country into a member of the United Nations, and beyond that, an international fund of $50 billion would be formed to energize the economy of the new Palestinian state, hopefully elevating the Palestinian standard of living up to the level of the people of Israel, which would be leaps and bounds beyond where they're at now. If the Palestinians continue to refuse cooperation with the Trump peace plan, all of these lucrative offers will be lost to them. So they've taken away their veto power. They can't just get up and walk away from the table like they have in every other peace, the majority of the peace negotiations. They can't do that to this one because Israel's going to go ahead and implement its part. And so the surrounding Arab states are urging Palestinians, President Abbas, to take advantage of the Trump peace plan. That is unprecedented, everybody. And they're contending this is the best offer the Palestinians will ever get, and it should not be missed. So, as the July 1, 2020 deadline rapidly approaches, Abbas he's desperately trying to stop Israel's plan for annexation. However, he's really powerless to stop it. I mean, he's appealing to the European Union and the United Nations to place Israel under economic boycott. But this would have little effect as long as the United States is willing to offset any economic shortfalls that might be created by a boycott and to use our veto power with any Security Council resolution. So, what's going to happen? Well, the possibility is, you know, Abbas is determined to bring America and Israel before the United Nations. He's going to contend that Israel and the United States is in open violation of international law. Israel and the United States will argue the Palestinians have been given all that they've claimed that they wanted, a Palestinian state, a capital in East Jerusalem. But besides this, they would have recognition of a statehood and the status of full membership in the United Nations. I mean, they're going to get everything they want other than driving Israel off into the sea. And what is the possibility that when the United Nations General Assembly convenes in September, that the nations of the world will reach a consensus concerning President Trump's peace plan? The Bible prophesies a plan between the Israelis and Palestinians is going to take place. The only question is when. When will the prophesied agreement, when's that going to be implemented? And, you know, Scripture states that when that prophesied agreement is implemented, that's going to trigger the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus to the earth. Now, I should tell you this. We Endtime Ministries, cannot say with certainty that the scenario I just went through will come together this year. But it certainly appears likely. If it does take place, and I say if, then you and I will enter the final 7 years in 2020. So, if you're sitting out there wondering, why in the world is Irvin and Dave talking about the peace agreement so much? You understand this is a prophecy with a date on it. We do not set dates. You've heard of these people that have set these, oh, you know, the Lord's coming in September 23rd because of this planet's going to move over into this constellation of stars and abracadabra. The Lord's going to come on September 23rd. We do not do that. Never have, never will. However, the Bible does. The Bible says when a confirmation of the covenant occurs, when the Antichrist confirms a covenant, he's going to confirm it for a 7-year period. When he does that, and we know that we've started, we can say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we've got 7 years left according to the Bible, and the Bible has never been wrong, nor will it be wrong. So, my question to you today on this program, can you explain? Imagine if this final 7 years does happen, does begin, let's say over the next, I don't know, 2 to 6 months. Hypothetical situation. What if it does? And you go to your family and say, hey, the final 7 years to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon has just begun. We're in the final 7 years. And they look at you and say, prove it. What would you do? Would you say, well, I got a television program for you to watch or a radio program, that would be better than saying, I don't know. I heard a couple guys on a radio program once, and they told me that, and so I'm telling you. Or I read an article that they wrote or something. The best answer you could have is, okay, let me tell you, this scripture, this prophecy, take them to the Bible and explain it. So that's what I'm going to go through on the last segment of our program, Daniel's 70th week. It's a 490-year prophecy. And the last 7 years of this prophecy is the one that we will begin when the prophesied agreement is confirmed. The prophecy is given in Daniel 9, verses 24 through 27. It's a 490-year prophecy, and it's given to us in 3 segments. And we're going to begin by looking at verse 24. It says, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, bring in the everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, and prophesy, and to anoint the most holy place. So what's meant by the 77s? Well, God's telling us that there will be 77-year periods of time in the prophecy. How do we know that each of the 7s is 7 years? Well, in Daniel 9:27, it states the event called the Abomination of Desolation will occur in the middle of the last 7. So if I can prove to you how long the last half of this 7 is, all we have to do is multiply it by 2 to know how long the full period of 7 is, right? Well, that's easy enough. And so what we'll do when we get back from the break is I will take you through this prophecy. I'll try to get it finished by the end of the program because we want you to be able to explain when these events transpire over the next few months. You can go to your family, your friends, your sphere of influence and say, hey, if it happens and we come and tell you, we've started the final 7 years.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So we're going to prove to you that the final Daniel's 70th week is a 7-year period. And it's really pretty easy. Jesus told his disciples in Matthew 24:15 through 21 that the abomination of desolation would start the Great Tribulation. There are 6 different scriptures that say the Great Tribulation will last only 3.5 years. I know a lot of people teach a 7-year tribulation. That's not scriptural. And so these scriptures are Daniel 7:25, Revelation 13:5, Daniel 12:7, Revelation 11:2, Revelation 11:3, and Revelation 12:14. So, if the last half of this 7 is 3½ years, then the first half of this is 3½ years. And that means the entire 70th 7 is 7 years long. So obviously the other 69 sevens are each 7 years long, which lets us know that we are looking at a 77-year periods of time, and 70 years times 70 is 490 years. So we'll go back to the beginning of the 490 years. Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Daniel chapter 9 verse 1 through 3 tells us that Daniel was given the 490-year prophecy during the first year of King Darius around 538 BC, after the Medes and the Persians had replaced Babylon as the leading empire of the world. So Daniel 9:25 in the NIV reveals that the 490 years begins with the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem. It says, know and understand this. From the time the world goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one comes, the ruler, there will be 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and it will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in time of trouble. So most likely this decree to restore the rebuilding and to rebuild Jerusalem, it refers to the prophesied decree of Cyrus, King Cyrus, the king of Persia, back in Ezra 6:3. That occurred around 538 BC, if the dates here are accurate. And the history and the calendars that we have for this time period, they're kind of unreliable. However, and this is very important because some people try to lock this down and they're going out of their mind. When the 490-year time period begins, that's not near as important as what is important is to understand what happens at the end of the 69 sevens, or the 483 years, and what happens during the final 7-year period. That's what we're concerned about. If you don't exactly know when it begins, that's not really important to interpreting the prophecy. But some people want to lock it down and say there's no gaps and all this other stuff. If you try to do that, you're going to be, you're not going to know, you're going to be in the dark, believe me. So the prophecy is given in 3 segments. Very important. Verse 25 explains that the prophecy is given in 3 segments. It says 7 sevens are 49 years, 62 sevens are 434 years, and then Daniel 9:27 states that there will be a final 7-year period. So the prophecy is given in 3 segments, a total of 490 years, a 49, a 434, and a 7-year period. So the revealing of the Messiah is given in this prophecy. I mean, there's so much packed in here. Daniel 9:26 tells us that the 434th year segment will end with 2 major events. It says, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off and have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end will come in like a flood, and war will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. So this passage states that the anointed one, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, will be cut off at the end of the 69th 7. And then it says, after the Messiah is cut off, the temple and the city of Jerusalem will be destroyed. You say, well, hold on, Dave. Wait. We know when Jerusalem was destroyed, it was destroyed in 70 AD. So the prophecy specifically says the Messiah would come and be cut off before Jerusalem was destroyed. So we know the Messiah, Jesus Christ, had to come before 70 AD. It's pretty awesome to understand this prophecy. A lot of people say, oh, no, Jesus wasn't the Messiah. Well, we know that the Messiah came and was cut off. Crucifixion would be considered being cut off, right? I mean, did a messianic figure appear in the world shortly before Jerusalem was destroyed? Yes. Jesus came and fulfilled every single one of the prophecies about the first coming of the Messiah. Was Jesus cut off like the prophecy said he would be? Yeah. I mean, being crucified, sure, he was cut off. And this gives absolute proof that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. Now comes the gap. According to verses 26 and 27, two things were to happen after the 483 years and before the final 7 years. The Messiah was going to be cut off, and Jerusalem and the temple were to be destroyed. Well, Jesus was crucified sometime between 26 AD and 38 AD. You say, no, it was 33 AD. No, can't. No, you gotta understand when Jesus was really born and how old he was and this, that, and the other. A lot of people say, well, Jesus Christ was 33 years old when he died. But there's no scriptural proof for that. At one point they said, well, you're not yet 50 years old. So there's no, a lot of people, it's traditional that he was 33 years old. But there's no scriptural proof that Jesus Christ was 33 years old when he died. I hate to step on your traditional toes, but we got to look at it the way it teaches. It doesn't say he was 33 years old. So Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed in 70 AD. So notice that there were 30 to 40 years between these two events. So it indicates that there is a gap between the 69th 7 and the 70th 7. So there were gaps in between these three sections. And that's obviously the reason that prophecy gives these in segments. If there were no gap, then the prophecy could have simply been given as a 490-year prophecy set in stone. But it's not. Instead, we are told that there would be 49 years, then 443 years, and then a final 7-year period. The length of the gap is not disclosed to us in prophecy. However, we do know today that this second gap is about 2,000 years. We still live in the gap period right now. But the final 7 years will begin very, very, very soon. And we know that from the convergence of all the prophecies and everything that's happening. That's why we are watching this peace agreement every single day. And these things are moving along very rapidly. So we've got to talk about them. We'll give you an update on Monday, and then something will happen Tuesday afternoon. We got to come back on Wednesday. And then something will happen that night. Irvin's got to mention it on Thursday. And it's like happening so fast. If we skipped a week of talking about it, it's like we would have missed part of the prophecy. I mean, it's happening that fast. So, understanding the final 7 years. We've already proven that the 1-7 in this prophecy equals a 7-year period. And the final 7 years of this prophecy, described in Daniel 9:27, I'm going to read from the NIV version, says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1-7. What's a 7? It's a 7-year period. In the middle of this 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering. And the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out upon him. So, there's an incredible amount of information in this one small verse. In order to understand verse 27, you need to answer 5 questions. Who is this he that will confirm the covenant? Some people say it's the Pope. Some people say it was Antiochus Epiphanes. Who's the he? You got to answer that question. What is the covenant? What is the confirmation of the covenant? What is meant by the stopping of the sacrifices? And what is the event called the Abomination of Desolation? So let's take the questions one at a time. Who is the he that will confirm the covenant? Well, this is actually an easy one. Because the he does 3 things. He confirms the covenant, he causes the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and he sets up the abomination of desolation. Well, you skip over a couple chapters. Daniel 11, verse 21 through 22, states the Antichrist, the final king of the north, will be the prince of the covenant. So it's the Antichrist that will confirm the covenant. Daniel 11:31 says the Antichrist and his partners will take away the daily sacrifice. And then Daniel 11:31 also says that the Antichrist and his partners will place the abomination that maketh desolate. So, the he, it's pretty easy to understand. The Antichrist confirms the covenant. The Antichrist causes the sacrifice and oblation to stop. And the Antichrist places the abomination of desolation. So it's easy. The he in Daniel 9:27 is the Antichrist. Now, the second question we have to ask as a result of Daniel 9:27, what is the covenant? And you realize that these prophecies are pertaining, they're written 2,500 years ago. They're pertaining to you and me right now. We watch this every day. We're following this. And President Trump's peace initiative could very well be the one that starts the final 7 years. So the second question we got to answer, because I want you to be able to explain this to your friends and family, your sphere of influence. Because if this thing kicks off and we start the final 7 years and we send a magazine out to every home in Israel, and we're on news programs and doing interviews, and we're on the radio saying, hey, we started the final 7 years. You go tell your mom and dad or your cousin or somebody, and they're like, you're nuts. What are you talking about? You say, well, it's in the Bible. And they say, prove it. And you're like, I don't know. We want you to be able to do that. So the second question you got to answer from Daniel 9:27, what's the covenant? The Antichrist is going to confirm a covenant for a 7-year period. What's the covenant? Genesis 15:18, King James, it says, in the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So all the way back in the first book of the Bible, God made a covenant with Abram, or Abraham, that the Holy Land would be given to his descendants, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and that lineage. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. He's going to give them this Holy Land for his descendants for a homeland. And this is referred to as the Abrahamic covenant. So the third question, what is the confirmation of the covenant? Well, if the covenant is God's promise that Abraham's descendants would live in the promised land, then what's the confirmation of the covenant? Well, we've already proven that the Antichrist is the he of Daniel 9:27. So it follows that he is the one who will confirm the covenant. In other words, the Antichrist will confirm Israel's right to a homeland in the promised land. You say, well, that's got to be Donald Trump, right? Well, we may talk about that when we get back.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-END-TIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
Can you see how alive this prophecy is? This 2,500-year-old prophecy is alive in our news every day. I mean, we go there twice a year. We walk around in the West Bank. We explain to everybody, here's Israel, right on the other side of the Mount of Olives. That starts the West Bank. Here's how this is all going to happen. I mean, we're there. We're showing people. We're living through this. Can you see the dynamics that's going on right now with all of this? I mean, we are on just the early stages of starting this final 7-year process. And a lot of people have said, well, hey, it says the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for a 7-year period. That's got to be Donald Trump. A lot of other people have tried. They haven't been successful, and it's going to be Donald Trump. Well, that's why you have to understand other prophecies in the Bible. The Bible tells us specifically that the Antichrist will come from the reborn Holy Roman Empire or the current European Union. So it can't be Donald Trump. So when you're trying to interpret all this stuff, then you got to step back and go, okay, it looks like Donald Trump, but it can't be him. So we know that at some point, the international community, the European Union, Russia, all these players have to come and get involved. And somebody from the European Union will get this thing across the finish line somehow, some way. And that's why we reported last week that President Vladimir Putin of Russia, he has said he's willing to negotiate, because right now the Palestinians they've just closed off all negotiation with the United States, all contact, period. So and they did that because President Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. They said, hey, you guys aren't a good negotiator. You're not fair and balanced, so we're done. And so Vladimir Putin has said, hey, I can be a mediator between the Palestinians and the United States and maybe get something going with this peace agreement. This was last week. So me and Irvin are sitting here at dinner going, ding, ding, ding. You understand what's going on here? If Russia, the international community, Europe, and all of them get involved in this and get this thing across the finish line, somebody involved in getting that is the Antichrist. He's going to be involved somehow, some way. Now, he's not revealed until 3.5 years later, according to the 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, at the Abomination of Desolation. But somehow or another, he's going to be involved in getting the thing confirmed. And so when you're trying to understand these prophecies, make sure you understand all of them and how they all fit together. And it will help you with the overall view of how this is all going to come down. Now, presently, Israel's enemies deny that she has a right to a homeland there. I mean, most of the Arab countries have yet to recognize Israel's right to exist. But that's changing. I just today read some articles where they're saying that Arab nations around Israel have been working with Israel for years behind closed doors on tech plays and things like that. And they are willing to negotiate a lot of things and to try to, let's say, not force, but to softly coerce, if you can do that, the Palestinians to get on board with President Trump's peace plan. We're watching this happen. And so the articles are there. Go to some Israeli news sources and you'll see what I'm saying, that they're willing, our negotiators and our people here in the States in President Trump's administration are saying, hey, in the news, they're saying, oh, no, we can't have this. Palestinians can't be a part of this. But behind closed doors, they're saying, hey, what can we do to help get this thing across the finish line? That's in the news today. So when the confirmation of the covenant takes place, and it's going to before very long, the Antichrist and the world community will confirm Israel's right to exist in the homeland, the Holy Land, within agreed upon borders. That's what this mapping that's going on, this mapping committee in Israel, they're defining the borders that will be agreed upon just within the next few months. And this agreement will also establish the Palestinian homeland in the area of Judea and Samaria, commonly referred to as the West Banks. And I would refer back to the map we looked at earlier. Now you understand the Jordan Valley, the West Bank, the Moab Mountains in Jordan, how it's all situated over there, if you've never been over there. If you've been there, then you know what I'm talking about. We go down in the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea. If you got everybody that's been with us, remember riding out of Jerusalem down all the way down to the Dead Sea. That's in the Jordan Valley right there. And so then you can understand where we said, hey, there's Jericho right over there. All that's the Jordan Valley. This is the area they're talking about in the news every day. So the fourth question we've got to ask, or answer rather, what is meant by the stopping of the sacrifices? You realize all of this is included in Daniel 9:27, one verse? But to understand all this, you've got to make sure you've got your timelines and everything right, and all of the prophecies laid out, how this is all going to come to pass. Once you do that, then this is one of the hardest prophecies in the Bible to understand. But if you just went to Daniel 9:24 through 27, there is no way you can understand all this. Because you've got just any other topic in the Bible. I've said this a million times. Any other topic in the Bible. I don't care if it's salvation, if it is how a Christian should live, doctrine, I mean, anything like that. You have to understand, you have to go to every verse pertaining to that topic. If you just went to Daniel 9:24 through 27 and tried to figure all this out, it would be impossible. You've got to understand the teachings of Jesus in Matthew 24. You've got to understand Daniel as he goes on to explain some of these things in Daniel 11. And there are other passages. So once you understand all of these things, then you can say, wow, I kind of get this. And you also have to understand some history. So what's meant by the stopping of the sacrifices? The fourth question. Well, the Middle East Peace Agreement will place the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement between Muslims and Jews, according to Revelation 11:1 and 2. Israel will be allowed to build her third temple without disturbing the Muslim holy places. And when the temple is completed, animal sacrifices will be offered just like they were in the Old Testament. This is one of the main reasons that Israel wants to rebuild the temple, so they can resume sacrifices for the atonement for sin, just like they did in the old tabernacle plan, the temple plan, and they want to do it again on the Temple Mount in a temple. And they're going to do it, but just for a very short time. These are the sacrifices that the Antichrist will stop, probably at the urging of the animal rights activists, because they're going to be sacrificing animals day and night. And it's going to be, no, I don't have corona, so everybody relax. It's going to be at the urging of the animal rights activists, everybody saying, hey, you guys got to stop all this bloodshed. This is crazy. And, just like people say you can't mess with some kind of a turtle egg, or you can't mess with an eagle egg, and this, that, and the other. Well, imagine when they are slashing the throats of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of animals on TV. The cry is going to be, stop. World leader, Antichrist, you got to stop this. Well, there's going to come a time when he comes on the scene and he stops it. So the fifth question you have to ask, or to answer, to be able to understand Daniel 9:27. What is the event called the Abomination of Desolation? Now, some people will say that happened back when Antiochus Epiphanes, when he sacrificed a pig on the altar of the temple. That was the Abomination of Desolation. Everything was fulfilled, and there are no more prophecies to be fulfilled between now and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Okay, that was not the Abomination of Desolation. You say, well, how do you know? Well, because in Matthew 24, Jesus prophesied the Abomination of Desolation would be a future event, and he also was talking to the people of the end time when he made the prophecy. So he prophesied that the Abomination of Desolation would occur just prior to his second coming, not prior to his even being, or around when he was even going to be here. Okay? So, or back in his era, we'll say. So the Abomination of Desolation, it appears many times in Scripture. In Matthew 24:15, Jesus said the Abomination of Desolation would stand in the holy place. Well, the holy place is the temple. You understand when he is when he's telling them this, that he was standing there, and they were standing there on the Temple, on the Mount of Olives, looking at the Temple Mount. So they understood the holy place is in the temple, or at least on the Temple Mount. The Apostle Paul described this in more detail. He said in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 through 4. He said the second coming of Jesus would not occur until the man of sin, the son of perdition, the Antichrist, was revealed. And he went on to say that the Antichrist would actually sit in the temple of God, claiming to be God. So where does the abomination of desolation occur? In the temple, in a future temple. The abomination of desolation is when the Antichrist will stand in that future temple, proclaiming himself to be God. And now we know how to read and understand Daniel 9:27. And when we see a peace treaty signed between Israel and the Palestinians, which confirms Israel's right to a homeland in the Middle East, places the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement, allows for the building of the third temple, and it also that Israel will retain control of all of Jerusalem all the way to the end, and the settlers that I mentioned earlier, they will be allowed to live out there once the West Bank is annexed. They're going to make provisions for those settlements to stay there, and the settlers are balking against this now. Listen at this. In today's news, they actually came out that the settlers came up with a fake map. You know, there's the mapping committee there that's mapping everything, and with David Friedman and everybody, they're trying to map everything out and get everything detailed. Well, the settlers came up with a fake map and said, hey, we've got the map. Everything's ready to go. And, of course, it was to their benefit, but it was simply not the case. So there's a lot of tug of war going on here with the settlers and what's going on, because they realize they're going to be surrounded by Palestinians out there. And that's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. So when you see a peace agreement that allows for all these things, that's the beginning of the final 7 years to Armageddon. In the middle of that final 7 years, the Antichrist is going to stop the sacrifices, stand in a rebuilt Jewish temple, and proclaim to be God. That event's the abomination of desolation, which begins the final 3.5 years to Armageddon. This final 3.5 years is what Jesus called the Great Tribulation. So there you have it, folks. It's the final 7-year prophecy. Daniel's 70th week is how most prophecy teachers would refer to it. And that's why we talk about it so much, because we're living through this. The President Trump's peace initiative has as much chance of being it as any peace initiative we've ever seen. And so we're watching it on a daily basis. We want to talk to you because we want you to be able to explain to your family, friends, sphere of influence how to explain it.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.